Okay. Good morning, all. Yesterday we discussed the curriculum and all, and today we are going to begin with unit number one. Unit number one is fundamental concepts and definitions. So let's begin with the objectives of that unit number one. So the objectives are the first one will be starting with definition of thermodynamics. We'll see what is meant by thermodynamics. Next, we'll be talking about thermodynamic system and different types of thermodynamic systems. What exactly mean by thermodynamic system and what are their various types that we'll be looking at. Then we'll discuss macroscopic and microscopic viewpoint. We will be differentiating between those two viewpoints of thermodynamic study. Then we'll talk about various thermodynamic properties, processes, and cycles as well. Then thermodynamic equilibrium is there. What is meant by thermodynamic equilibrium and what conditions are there that has to be satisfied by a system to be in thermodynamic equilibrium. Then next we will talk about quasi-static process. Quasi-static in the sense almost stationary or the process which is always in equilibrium. That kind of process is called as quasi-static process, and we are going to discuss that one as well. Then we'll talk about work and heat transfer. Thermodynamics is basically conversion of heat into work and work into heat, or interconversion of those two. So we'll touch up that point as well. Then next one, we will be discussing temperature and its measurement. What is meant by temperature and what are the various devices that are used for the temperature measurement. And this whole temperature measurement is based on zeroth law of thermodynamics. So we will be looking at that one also. And the last point, we will be differentiating between sensible heat and latent heat. All these things you might have covered in diploma level as well. If you can recall those things, that is very good. If you don't able to recall that one, we will cover all those things in detail. So the next stage, what is mean by thermodynamics basically? As I just said, it is actually conversion or transfer of heat and work. If you consider a system and if it is interacting with its surrounding in the form of heat and work, then that whole study is nothing but thermodynamics. Means you will be considering conversion of that heat and work into each other, as well as you will be using some system to have that conversion. If I take the example of internal combustion engine, the device is internal combustion engine or system is internal combustion engine, and that system is going to be used for the conversion of heat into useful work. You will be burning fuel and the generated heat will be finally converted into mechanical work, right? So while having that conversion of heat into useful work, there are certain changes being takes place in the system itself. So when you consider those changes as well as that transfer of heat into work, that overall study is nothing but a thermodynamics. Now what is meant by system, surrounding and boundary? So, to have that better understanding, let's consider a sketch shown over here that contains a flask that is having some liquid in it. A bubble is placed on the open end of that flask and it is being heated with a burner. Okay? This is the whole system and surrounding system. Now here, system is nothing but area or region under the consideration. If you want to study some phenomena that is related to some system, you need to limit your region. Limit your region in the sense, if I consider example of this flask and burner system, if this burner is my system, okay, then if I want to study the changes occurring inside this burner because of this heating, I will be focusing inside this flask only. The changes occurring outside the flask are none of my interest. Why? Because there are certain limitations of considering those things. If I consider the changes occurring in this region, or if I keep expanding this region, my system will become infinite. As system becomes infinite, there will be inclusion of many unnecessary things. Means beyond this flask, there is some atmosphere. If I keep on extending the boundary, there will be wall of the room. Suppose this system is some room or in some laboratory. If I expand region further, I will be going out of this wall also. And if I want to study that whole system, I have to consider properties of wall, properties of atmosphere beyond the wall, inside the wall. And that way system will become unnecessarily complicated, right? And to avoid that one, we need to limit our area of study. And to limit that area of study, what we do, we usually place a boundary. So now this is our system and it is separated with the dotted line from its surrounding, and that line is nothing but a boundary. Now this boundary could be real as well as imaginary. It need not to be real always, because if I take an example of a room that is fitted with air conditioning system, and if I am studying the properties of that air conditioning system, this air conditioning system is interacting between the atmosphere inside the room and outside the room, right? It is going to take heat from the room and it is going to dissipate it to the atmosphere. Now, if I consider this room as my area of study, it is separated or it is enclosed with the walls. That room is going to have walls, right? And that walls are nothing but my boundary. So now it is real one. But in many cases, this kind of real boundary would not be there. But still, I need to limit my region of study. And in that case, what I consider, I'll simply limit my area of study with some imaginary boundary. And in that case, we need not to have a real one. Okay. So that way, this boundary could be real as well as imaginary also. Next, thermodynamic system and their types. So now we know what is meant by thermodynamic system. Now we are going to talk about types of thermodynamic systems. There are basically three types of thermodynamic system. The first one is isolated, second one is closed, and third one is open system. The interaction between system and surrounding is going to be in the form of energy and matter. Okay, energy and matter or energy and mass. If system is going to exchange energy as well as matter across the boundary of the system. Now this is our system, this is boundary of the system, and this is surrounding. If system is exchanging both energy as well as matter, then that system is called as open system. If it is exchanging only energy and not matter, it becomes closed system. And if it is not exchanging anything, it is neither exchanging energy nor matter, then it becomes isolated system. If you take the examples of those systems, isolated system is nothing but a flask. If you have used flask, if you put hot water in it or if you put cold water in it, the temperature would be maintained for like 12 hours, not for infinite time, because that is not a perfect vessel, but still the temperature could be maintained for a longer duration. So in case of flask, we don't exchange energy as well as matter. Now, in the same flask, if I replace that insulating vessel, means instead of using insulating vessel, if I use normal vessel, but it is closed one, it is not open. It is normal vessel, normal steel vessel, and it has got lid placed on it, so it is closed one. In this vessel, I can add heat, as well as once this vessel gets heated, it is going to transfer heat to the atmosphere around it, right? So energy can enter the system, energy can leave the system, but as this lid is closed, I cannot add matter in it, I cannot remove matter from it. So here, energy interaction is there, but matter interaction is not there. So this becomes closed system. And in the last one, if I remove the lid from this vessel, here I have removed that lid. So now it has become open system. I can add the heat. Heat can be rejected to atmosphere. As it is open one, I can add matter, as well as if it contains water, if I start heating, once the boiling point has reached, the water will get converted into steam and that will start escaping to the atmosphere. So matter can enter the system, matter can leave the system, and that way it becomes an open system. Anybody has got any doubt in this one? Let me know. Should I proceed further? I'll take this as S. Next one, macroscopic and microscopic viewpoints. Whenever you study any thermodynamic system, there are two approaches studying that thermodynamic system. The first approach is called as macroscopic view, and second approach is called as microscopic view. To differentiate between those two, let me take one example. Suppose this is a closed vessel. It has got air in it. Okay, and I have started heating that vessel. I have started heating that vessel. So what will happen? As this air starts absorbing heat provided, its temperature will start increasing, right? As its temperature start increasing, the molecules will start expanding. The molecules will start moving here and there, and because of that one, the pressure inside the vessel will start increasing. So ultimate result is going to be increase in pressure. What we did, we provided heat as an input and we got the change as a change in pressure. Temperature also has got increased, but one phenomenon that we are considering is the increasing pressure. Now, if I want to correlate between this heat supplied and change in pressure, means I want to know for what amount of heat supplied, what amount of pressure increase is there. If I want to establish relationship between those two. So what I will do, I will put one pressure gauge over here. I will measure the pressure before heating. I will provide some amount of heat and I will note down the pressure, right? So now that way I can establish the relationship between heat supplied and pressure increase. So here, if I want to know by what amount of heat supplied, what amount of pressure has increased, I just need to measure initial pressure and final pressure. That way I will get the change in pressure with amount of heat supplied, right? This is one approach. What was the intention? To find the change in pressure with supplied heat. So what I did, I just simply placed one pressure gauge and I measured initial pressure and final pressure. That's it. The next phenomena is, or next approach is, in the same system, once you start heating, suppose there are certain number of molecules. Okay, those molecules have certain properties. It has got certain pressure, it has got certain velocity, it has got certain temperature and all. Right? I will measure all those properties of individual molecule. As I start heating, as its temperature increases, its temperature increases because of the increase in temperature. They will start expanding, they will start moving here and there, they will start colliding with each other, their velocity will increase. And because of increase in velocity and all, finally there will be increase in pressure. So what I will do, I will initially measure all these properties of molecules. I will keep measuring those properties with increase in temperature, and that way I will use in changing those properties to predict the change in pressure. So in first method, what we did, we simply placed one pressure measuring device, that is pressure gauge, and we correlated the relation between heat supplied and pressure increase. And in second method, we measured properties of those molecules before process to begin. During the process, we kept measuring those properties, and ultimately we predicted the change in pressure. Now, if I ask you few questions, out of those two methods, which one is simple one? You can unmute and let me know. Which one you find simple, first one or the second one? The one where we use pressure gauge, suppose that is method 1, and second one is this one. So which one is simple do you find?
First one.
First one is simple, very good. Which is going to be less complicated? First one, second one is going to be more complicated.
Yes.
If I compare the number of properties that need to be considered, in first method, I need to consider very less properties. In second method, I need to consider more number of properties. If I consider the number of mathematical calculations required, in first method, what I need to do, I just need to measure initial pressure and final pressure. If I subtract final from initial, I will get the change in pressure. But in case of second method, I need to consider all the properties of individual molecules. There are a number of molecules, right? And with change in temperature, all these properties are going to vary continuously. So to correlate all those things, simple mathematical calculations are not useful. I need to go for some advanced mathematical methods, right? So these are the differences between first method and second one. Now this first method is called as macroscopic approach, and second method is called as microscopic approach. The macroscopic approach is also called as classical thermodynamics, and microscopic approach is also called as statistical thermodynamics. This whole table I have explained in these two figures. If you have any query, any doubt, let me know. That is the difference between macroscopic approach and microscopic approach.
Sir, can you repeat it once?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't get your question.
Sir, can you repeat it once through this diagram? Have you explained? Can you repeat it once?
Okay, do I need to repeat that one? Okay, I'll do. Okay, I'll explain this table and correlate with these figures also. So the microscopic approach is, in macroscopic approach, we simply neglect the changes occurring at molecular level. In this first approach where we use this pressure gauge, we didn't consider properties of individual molecules, right? So we simply neglect the changes occurring at molecular level in case of macroscopic approach. But in microscopic approach, that is in second method, we will be considering changes occurring with individual molecules. So changes occurring at molecular level will be considered. That is the first difference. Second difference, that is the name only. Next difference is the macroscopic approach requires simple mathematics formula, because here I just need to measure final pressure, initial pressure, and subtract those two, I will get the change in pressure, right? So I need to use simple mathematics, whereas in case of microscopic approach, I need to go for advanced statistical and mathematical methods, because there are large number of calculations involved. In macroscopic, next difference is very few properties are required. I was required to measure change in pressure. So I just correlated with the help of heat supplied and change in pressure. So with one or two properties, I got the clear understanding of the system. But if I am using microscopic approach, I need to use large number of variables, because individual molecules will have few properties. those properties are going to continuously increase. There are n number of molecules in the system, and if I combine all those together, there are large number of variables in it. And last one, the approach is quite simple, and the microscopic approach is quite complicated. Is that fine now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next, thermodynamic properties. So there are certain properties that we need to consider while studying the thermodynamics. The properties are like temperature, pressure, volume, specific volume, mass, weight, density, specific gravity, and humidity. Like these are some important properties that we are going to consider. Now, all these properties are basically categorized in some major categories. The categories are intensive properties and extensive properties. So what is meant by intensive and what is meant by extensive? For example, if I take 2 cups of coffee, this one is half filled, this one is half filled. This one has got temperature of 40 degrees Celsius. This one also has got a temperature of 40 degrees Celsius. If I pour coffee from this cup to this cup, so now this is filled one, will its temperature increase beyond 40 or it will drop below 40?
Drop below 40.
It will drop below 40 immediately.
Not.
No,
Not
sir. Not
immediately.
yet.
For time being, its temperature is going to remain 40 only, right? As heat start dissipating to the atmosphere, it will start dropping gradually. But at instant, when I pour this coffee from one cup to another, the temperature is going to remain 40, right? So
Yes.
when I added mass, its temperature has not changed because its temperature was same. So temperature is independent of the mass. Similarly, pressure of this cup, if I pour this liquid in this cup, its pressure is also going to remain same. So there are certain properties, those properties are independent of the mass. If I add mass or subtract mass, those properties are not going to change. Those properties are called as intensive properties. The properties which are independent of the mass. To remember this one, intensive, so independent of the mass. Next is extensive. Those properties are dependent of the mass. What are those properties? Mass is there, obviously. If I add mass, mass is going to increase. Also, volume is another property, that is extensive one. That is correct, right? If I take 1 kg of jaggery and another 1 kg of jaggery, and if I put those two together, obviously the mass volume of the system is going to increase, right? Similarly, internal energy, heat capacity, and some more properties are there. Those properties are dependent of the mass. And those properties are called as extensive properties. Okay. Next. So now we are going to discuss those important properties in detail. The first one is temperature. What is temperature? It is basically degree of hotness or coldness. We cannot say this is too hot. We cannot say this is too cold. I need to put it in numbers, right? It is of 40 degrees Celsius, it is of 60 degrees Celsius, or it is of 100 degrees Celsius. So that degree of hotness or coldness is called as temperature. Next one is pressure. Pressure is basically a force upon area, right? That is in normal definition. Now, when you measure that pressure, I'm not going to talk about these units and all because you might be familiar with those things. This is important one. Pressure measurement. Now, you might find questions asked on this image or a picture itself in any competitive examination or GATE or any government exam as well. So this one is quite important one. Here you will get to know what is mean by gauge pressure, what is mean by positive gauge pressure, negative gauge pressure, or vacuum pressure, or what is mean by absolute pressure, right? So to clear that one, let's consider this is the reference line, and the pressure is absolute zero pressure. Okay. Now, with reference to this one, this is our atmosphere, the room where we are sitting, right? If I measure pressure of that room with reference to this absolute zero, that pressure is called as barometric pressure. Okay. Now, if I use any pressure gauge to measure the pressure, that pressure gauge always offers a reading with reference to this atmosphere. You use any kind of pressure gauge, the reference is always the atmospheric pressure. It will never tell us pressure with respect to this absolute zero. Okay, so the pressure that has been measured with respect to atmosphere, that pressure is called as gauge pressure. That is not absolute pressure. Now, if that pressure is above atmosphere, that is called as positive gauge pressure. If that pressure is below atmosphere, that is called as negative gauge pressure or vacuum pressure. Okay, you got the difference? The pressure measured with respect to atmosphere is gauge pressure. If it is more than atmospheric pressure, that is positive gauge pressure or a gauge pressure. And if it is below atmosphere, it is negative gauge pressure or vacuum pressure. Now, this gauge pressure, suppose this is gauge pressure with respect to atmosphere. If I add this one with absolute zero pressure, then this becomes absolute pressure. Even this negative gauge pressure, if I consider that pressure with absolute zero, then that is also becomes absolute pressure. So this is also absolute pressure. This atmospheric is also absolute pressure. This positive gauge pressure is also absolute pressure, because we are referring that one with respect to this absolute zero. Okay, so when you want to convert gauge pressure into atmospheric pressure, you need to add this absolute pressure with the, we add this atmospheric pressure with the gauge pressure.
Gauge pressure.
What is the gauge pressure? If I add this atmospheric, I will get the gauge pressure. Same thing can be done for this negative gauge pressure or vacuum pressure also. Is that clear with everyone?
Sir, please explain absolute zero pressure.
Absolute zero pressure in the sense the pressure at absolute 0 degree Kelvin, not absolute 0 degree Celsius. Degree Celsius can be converted into degree Kelvin by adding 273. So at minus 273 Kelvin, the pressure of system is called as absolute zero pressure. Is that fine?
Yes, sir. Sir, please show intensive properties and extensive
You need to
properties.
slide again.
Previous slide. Yes, sir.
Okay, take a look at this one.
Okay, sir, fine.
Yeah. What we were looking at. Okay, so next properties are mass. Mass is nothing but the matter contained by the body. We are just quickly going through those two things. The mass can be converted into weight when you take multiplication by acceleration due to gravity. W is equal to mg, that we know. The next one is density and gravity. Density is basically mass per unit volume. The volume occupied by a matter for unit mass, that is nothing but the density. Now, if I consider two substances, usually if I consider liquid, water is the reference if I consider gaseous substance, then air is the reference, right? So if I consider density of any substance which is in liquid form and compare that density with density of water, then that ratio is called as specific gravity. Similarly, if I consider any substance which is in gaseous form and compare its density with air, that ratio is called as specific gravity of that particular substance. Okay, so density and specific
Sir,
gravity. Or this density is
not understand specific gravity.
exactly density or relative density. So density, that is fine, right? Mass per unit volume. Now this
Volume.
specific gravity is nothing but relative density. Relative density in the sense, if I consider nitrogen gas, the reference is going to be atmospheric air. So if I compare density of that nitrogen with density of air, that ratio is nothing but specific gravity of nitrogen or relative density of nitrogen. Is that fine? Is that fine? Somebody was asking.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, okay. Next is humidity. Humidity is basically amount of vapor in the air.
Into the
That is fine, right? We need not to discuss that one. And similarly, relative humidity. Relative humidity in the sense, if I consider air at 27 degrees Celsius, okay? Suppose at instant, it has got humidity of 80. Ideally, suppose at 27 degrees Celsius itself, the humidity can have maximum value of 100. Then ratio of those two is called as relative humidity. Let me repeat this one again. Relative humidity is nothing but the amount of water vapor in the air compared to maximum amount of water vapor could be held at that same temperature. So actual to the maximum value. Actual means at present what value is there, and if you compare that one with what maximum value could be there, and if you take ratio of those two, that ratio is nothing but the relative humidity. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now this is quite interesting one. Point function and path function. Again, properties are categorized into another two groups. Those two groups are point function and path function. We are about to start this point function and path function, but that limited 40 minutes time got over and we forced to end this session right there. So today we'll be continuing with this point function and path function. So to differentiate between those two, let me take one simple example. What example I want to take? Suppose there is one room, and in that room, suppose in this corner, there is a temperature of 30 degrees Celsius. Okay. And in this corner also, temperature is, or let's say temperature over there is 40 degrees Celsius. Okay. So now, suppose I am standing over here. So as long as I am standing over here, if I am holding some object, or let's say I am carrying a cup of tea, which is in equilibrium with atmosphere around me. So let's say the temperature of that tea also 30 degrees Celsius. So if I started moving from this corner and through this path, I reaches to this another corner. The atmospheric temperature over here is 40 degrees Celsius. So if I stay there for little while, the cup of tea or tea in that cup will start absorbing heat from the atmosphere because the temperature of tea is 30 degrees Celsius, which is lower than 40 degrees. So it will start absorbing heat from the atmosphere, and after certain time, the T also attain this 40 degrees Celsius. Is that fine? Okay. So what I did, I followed this path. Let's continue. That little disturbance was there. So let's say I shifted from this corner to this corner through this path. So when I shift from this point to this point, the T is going to attain the temperature 40 degrees Celsius. Okay, after certain time. Suppose in another scenario, I shifted to this corner, and from this corner, I traveled along the wall to this corner, and again stayed for a while. The T is going to attain the temperature 40 degrees Celsius. So is it going to be get affected whether I travel through this path or I travel through this path? Is it going to be affected by a path I chosen?
No.
Right? Okay, let's take another example. Now instead of cup of tea, let me erase this one. Okay. Now instead of cup of tea, in the same room, suppose there is one table. Okay. Now I want to shift this table from this corner to this corner. Once I will follow this diagonal path, and in another case I will move it to the next corner and along the wall, and I will take it to the desired position. Now if I consider work, if I shift it diagonally, suppose work requirement is W1, and when I shifted it through this path along the wall, work requirement is W2. What will be the relation between W1 and W2? Are they going to be equal, less than, or greater than? What will be the relation
W1 is
W1 is less than W2.
W1 is less than W2, right? So here I can say that temperature is a property that is independent of the path followed. It is going to be dependent of the end state wherever I have traveled. This was my starting point, this was my end point of the journey. So it is the temperature is dependent of the end state and it is independent of the path followed, whereas work is dependent of the path followed. When I chosen this diagonal path, work requirement is less, whereas when I followed this right angled path, the work requirement is more. So I can say that work is dependent of the path followed. Okay. So similarly, the properties which are independent of the path followed are called as point function. Means whichever path you choose, the end state are going to decide those properties. The properties are like pressure, temperature, volume, etc. Whereas there are certain properties that are going to change with respect to path followed, and these properties are heat and work. And the properties which are dependent of the path followed are called as path function. Is that clear? Independent of the path followed, point function, and dependent of the path followed, path function. Okay.